What up, creative string players? 2020 coming, and I'm watching the Buckeyes game. I'm home alone, just with the dogs, and I want to share about some ideas about how to create the culture where you are, creating a culture that values your music, creating an opportunity for your music to be out there, or you're teaching, whether you're teaching or whether you're creating or performing. I want to talk about how I think it's your responsibility to create the awareness, to create the demand, and to create the perception of value among your audience, and actually to create an audience and to create culture. So this is really big for me, and I'm sure some of you have noticed it. But with the new year coming up, I think it's really important to talk about it even more. My dogs are getting in the trash. So the point is, you can't make music without resources. You need resources to create music. You need time or money or something. What are the other resources there are? Unless you have a trust fund. And when we go through school, all we have to think about is just doing the best job we can in music. But when we get out of school, we have to make money. We have to provide for our families or provide for ourselves. And so, to me, it's so important that we focus on generating those opportunities, generating the demand, and basically selling our music or selling our services, whatever they are, whether you're composing, whether you're arranging, teaching, performing, or whatever else you do as a musician. I hear a lot of people complaining about, oh, there's just no culture of live music in this town. Or, oh, in this town, just nobody values music education. None of the moms or none of the parents, are willing to spend the money for this thing. As if that's not your responsibility to change that. Like, I think, okay, every time someone doesn't want to pay me to perform, or they don't want to pay me to teach them, or, someone doesn't want to come to a gig, instead of me being mad at those people, being mad at the community that I live in, being mad about the situation, I take it as it's my responsibility. It's, if there's not already a culture or an awareness in which people value what I have to offer, then it's on me to educate them. If people don't think it's important to have their kids learn the violin or learn the piano or learn music, and if I'm a music teacher, then it's on me to educate them. Or not, or I need to move on and find somebody else who is into that. If you live in a huge city like New York City or Los Angeles or Berlin or whatever, then you can move on and you can find where there's already people who are educated about the value of what you do. Although even then, it's still going to be competitive. Like in New York City, where people love jazz music, it still doesn't mean it's easy for you to get people to come out to your show. So it's up to you to sell it. But talking about creating a culture, this reminds me of when I was in Columbus, Ohio, just starting out my jazz career. And what I did was, I thought I was going to work construction actually, but I talked to my parents and they said, well, don't you want to play the violin? And I said, yeah, I do want to play the violin, but I don't know how I'm going to make money playing the violin, And aside from playing with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra, which I ended up getting a job with them, but then I quit it because I did this other thing. So my parents were like, look, we'll help you figure out how to go and sell yourself. And I'll make the story quick, but my dad was basically like, you just call up 10 restaurants and go meet with the manager at like 3 o'clock when it's not busy. and either go meet with them or call them when it's not busy, and offer to go do a free audition. So that I offered to do free auditions. We're going for half an hour and play a free set. I brought a guitar player along with me, and so like I don't know. I called 10 or 15 of these places, and like maybe 8 gave me auditions, but it ended up that 4 of them booked me after the audition. 4 venues. And one of them gave me 2 days a week. So I had 5 days a week that I was playing in these basically restaurants. One was a hotel restaurant. The others were other kinds of restaurants. I did a Saturday brunch. I did a Sunday brunch. I did Friday night, Thursday night, Wednesday night. And then the Columbus Symphony had asked me to be a full-time sub, but I quit it because I was more interested in playing these duo gigs. And to some of the questions and points that people raised here earlier, I think it was Ruth. Ruth, you had raised this question about, what if you don't feel that you're ready musically to go out and play a gig, for example, like a duo gig playing jazz. I had no idea when I was 24 years old how to play jazz. Really, none. I mean, very little. But here's the thing most people don't realize. If you have a gig, you can hire the best musicians in your town. If you can pay their price, the best musicians always want to work as long as you can pay their price. So this just proves my point. Like, I did not know what I was doing, but I hired great piano players, great guitar players. I was able to pay them because I had the gig. Whoever has the gig, whoever does the sales and gets the gig has total control over everything. Because you can hire anybody you want. You got to be respectful of them. So the point is, I had the gig. I didn't know what I was doing musically, but I could hire the best piano players. I hired Bobby Floyd. He's like a world-class piano player. But I could pay his rate. So he was happy to come play with me. And even though I didn't know what I was doing musically, he was cool with it because I stayed in my lane and I was respectful. Like I asked a lot of questions. So if you don't feel you're ready, you can still get the gig and you can call musicians who are more experienced in a genre that you haven't played before. And you can just tell them like, hey, I'm not super experienced in this genre. And part of the reason I'm calling you is because I really respect you and I want to learn from you on the gig. So feel free to give me any pointers you want. But I could play in tune. I could play the melodies. I played the melodies. I would take a solo, and then I would ask questions. And that was it. So I had those five duo gigs a week for like 5 or 6 years. And my dad had helped me learn how to sell it, but my mom had pushed me on the marketing side. So she told me go and say hello to every person who comes in the restaurant. Get their mailing address. Back then it was snail mail. I don't even think we had email. I would get their phone number and their snail mail address. This was like 1996. And so I would promote these gigs. I put a sign up. My mom helped me put a sign up. My mom told me how to dress, how to be nice on the breaks. I would go talk to people. You got to do that stuff. I mean, most musicians suffer from this delusion. We suffer from this delusion that, number one, if we're just good at music, that's all we need to focus on, and everything else is going to fall in our laps, which is totally not true. It's absolutely not true. And here's how I can prove it. Hey. Oh, we got bears. Hey, calm down. Calm down. I'll bet there's a bear out there. Let's see if there's a bear out there. Hey. Calm down. I'm going to go to the other room. All right. So, what was I saying? Calm down. Oh yeah, it's I'll prove that it's not true, and here's how. Because Think about people who are really, really talented musicians who do not have work. Okay. Now think about musicians who are not super advanced, who have tons of work or making tons of money. There it is. That's the proof. Campaigns win, not merit. Campaigns. Sales campaigns win. Campaigns win presidential races too. Not the quality, not always the quality of a person. It's the quality of a campaign. Now, sometimes those things line up. Sometimes there are brilliant musicians who, who also get the recognition they deserve. But I kind of lost my train of thought with the dogs. I'm sorry about that. But the point is, I know what the point is. So I was 24, I was 25. I didn't know how to play jazz, but I could get through, and I hustled to get the gigs. And by getting those gigs, that's what taught me the music. That's how I learned the music. For like 5 years, I was playing 5 duo gigs a week in Columbus. And I would ask questions, I would learn new tunes, I would practice for the gig. And so my point is, if you want to get better as a musician, I really highly recommend that you focus on the business side, generating opportunities for yourself. A lot of people feel like they're not ready and they need to keep practicing. And I feel like that's a story that we tell ourselves, and you'll never be ready. None of us will ever be ready. Music is infinite. I'm not ready. But after school, we have to create that culture. We have to create the demand. We have to kind of throw ourselves into a fire in a different way, in my opinion. And it's a mistake to expect the world to just reward you for your talent. I think it's a total mistake. And I think it's a total fallacy that we are, for whatever reason, we pick that up throughout our training. Maybe it's because that's all we have to do growing up for 20 years when we're training, learning how to be musicians. All we have to focus on is just being as good as we can. I think the way for you to take the next step in your musical journey is in part to put yourself in more situations, consciously put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to deliver. And then practice for that thing. If it's a dual gig like what I used to do, or if it's like a teaching situation, or if like you're gonna make videos and share those videos, like then force yourself to make different kinds of videos and grow your skills to go with those videos. In every one of these situations, you have to consciously create an opportunity. You have to sell the opportunity, or you have to decide on the project that you're going to do. And that's what I think is going to help you. Another example of this, one more example of this, about this culture thing. So at that same time when I was in Columbus in 1996, there was a trumpet professor at Ohio State, and I took some private lessons with this jazz trumpet professor. His name's Faraz Whitted. He's awesome. He's in Chicago. I just saw him at the Midwest conference last week. And Faraz, he taught me like how to, lots of tricks of jazz, like, Freddie Hubbard lines and like bebop scales and all this stuff. He taught me a lot of really cool things. But Faraz created this weekly jam session at a place called Barrister Hall. And it was like, I don't forget, it was Friday or Saturday night. And there were some young cats, some guys that were actually like around my age, like also kind of hanging around Ohio State jazz scene, and some other cats too. But they would go every Friday night and they would throw down. Faraz had a quintet. They were doing like post bop and this type of thing. He would have people sit in, and it became a scene. When Faraz left, a lot of people kind of complained about, it's not the scene. There used to be a scene here in Columbus, but there's not a scene right now. And they would blame the venues, and they would blame the recession, and they would blame like the community. And I always just thought, Ferez created that. Like, Ferez created the culture. He went to some place that didn't have jazz and he created something. And it was the same thing for me. Like, I went and I found these places and I set up shop and I invited people out. I mean, it's a lot of work to get people out, but you can create that culture. And the same thing is true with teaching. If you're trying to build a studio, you can create that culture, and it might take a lot of work on the front side. Same thing if you're trying to create a bunch of digital content and get a project going, it might take a lot of work on the front side, but it's on you. It's on you. This is a great time to think about it because it's not only the new year, but it's the new decade. So I'm going to be focused on this a lot. And for those of you that you are excited about this, reach out to me because I have a business accountability group and a DIY course for musicians who are trying to deal with these kinds of things. I'll teach you how to sell. I'll teach you how to market. I'll help you get more accountable. I'll help you be more motivated. I'll teach you tactics. I'll teach you strategy. And you don't have to go back to school. You should be getting an education in the real world. You should be getting gigs. You should be throwing yourself in the fire, and because that's where life happens. It's like we got to be pushing our creative edge on all fronts. And a lot of times it's pushing ourselves in other ways outside of music that are going to make us better as musicians. So reach out to me, leave a comment if you're interested. I'll get you the links. I might just leave them under here anyway. And let's keep it going here in the group.